I'm trying to do what I want, and I get good grades. That's why I wear these hats with A's. These people recognize that's why they stay up in my face. Cause
people always ask me all these damn questions. People always ask all these damn questions.
They wanna know my play-by-play.
Hey, welcome back to the Lighthouse series. Got Dr. Ham with us as always. It's been a minute, Dr. Ham. How you doing?
Man, I'm well, man. It's good to be here. You know, I appreciate our opportunities that we get to share.
Yeah, man. It's been a minute, but we had to take some time to get some administrators together.
Yeah.
Speaking of administrators, I'd like to give this disclaimer that we talk at a high level, but we're meaning it to be low level, but we're gonna find every level in between. So, this is, take it for what it is. It's just guidance and what we think, and we put a lot of work into that. So, disclaimer, you will hear a lot of stuff. But with that, Doc, I wanted to first of all want to say congratulations to the channel for reaching 4,000 watch hours and reaching that 1.3K followers, so we can start making some moves. Okay, I love that. I also want to discuss the Tower of Babel. We were having a conversation about how the English language, I said something to you, was like, is the English language like just distorting us all? Like, you can't even say good morning without like it being tied to something like weekdays. And I'm saying it might seem catchy because of, you might have saw it on Instagram, but we've been talking about these things. We've been talking about the etymology of words and how they can mean multiple different things. And when you think about, the translations of the Bible and, how words are being used for you or against you. Hell, there's even words that are franchised that we use that we don't know, right? How is this speech getting us all confused? Like where does it begin? So we talk about the Tower of Babel because you dropped that on me.
Oh no, man, I hear you, bro. I think that language becomes a challenge when you've been deprived of language.
Yeah.
So essentially, the longer I give you access to language, the more skill you can become at creating it, because language forms the ideas and I think our signal went up. Oh, I think our signal went up. But I think those thoughts are those building blocks. And so when we start to add to those blocks, we can build bigger things. But sometimes the things that we are building that are bigger do not fit in the current reality where we live, because we're building it here first, and then we say it here second. And I think when it comes to any language, those who had access to it earliest would have more skill at using it for distortions or what have you.
Well, so what I'm finding is that we're very loose and flippant with our words. Like every single thing that we do. And to recognize that, post hoc, retroactively, after the fact, it's like you wish you could go back and fix all the words you said that were wrong. Right?
Yeah.
Because we get chances to do that, but sometimes we don't, because in those times of emotion, like sometimes we say things because in real time we feel a certain type of way and our brain just automatically syncs up with the words that we only know for that moment with our emotion, and it comes out. But the gracious of people would allow a person to at least clean that up.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. And I would just further add to the disclaimer that if there's confusion between an idea and like research, I think that's a separate issue. I want to say that differently. because
Okay, go
sometimes
ahead.
things are to be accepted sometimes, but not going further with them. So, like, I'll give you an example. If you go to the Bible in the book of John, chapter 1, it says, "In the beginning was the Word." Right? That word, if you look at it in the Greek, means logos. If you look up that, where we get the word logic from, it's also translated as reason. Yeah. So the idea that in the beginning of what? In the beginning of anything, logic and reason have to be there first. If there is no logic and reason present, no one is speaking, because we're just emotionally babbling.
So with that disclaimer that you, real quick, Doc, that disclaimer that you gave, it was to make sure that you're able to have a framework and be wrong in it without harm, right? That psychological safety.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to say, that because a lot of times the ideas are looking to be intersectional. Because if you're building anything, you understand that intersectionality becomes your greatest strength. So if I can intersect ideas in different frames or in different ideas, then it's easier to see it because you already understand this idea already. So in order to introduce a new idea, you must first give it a platform for it to be introduced on. Because if I give you the idea but no platform for it, it'll dissipate quickly. It'll just in one ear, out the other.
It's just potential energy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll say with a platform, if we're talking about words, right now, words and how they connect with people, I would venture to say that we understand exactly what words do, but I don't think we understand what the words that we're saying, even if we think we understand those words. So, if we were to talk about the lineage of certain words,
yes,
right, you would say, if you were to look up the etymology really quick, it would probably take you to something Greek.
Yes.
All right. But there are words and languages that existed before Greek.
Yes.
Right. And so now, if you're saying certain words now, like morning, in example, morning, wherever that comes from, we can have an understanding that there could be deception for people to actually continue to say that word. There is controversy for that type of behavior.
Well, and this goes back to the idea of spelling, casting spells, words essentially being your curses, meaning you can inhibit your world by the words you know. So if, like, for example, if I don't understand something, then it doesn't matter what words you give me. So it takes us back to our first tenet is, in all of your get understanding first. So I have to understand the message you're trying to convey. In the event that I fail to understand, I should be able to repeat the message that you said back to you and ask you, is that what you're saying? So there's clarity, but then there's ultimately, I think there's a shared agreement that we're not in any way trying to be duplicative.
Duplicitous?
Duplicitous.
Whatever that word is. Well, so I think that's fair, because in this world that we live in, with psychological safety being the quick buzzword that we just, being able to have ideas and thoughts without ridicule, but then when we're ready to act, go into action with them, having barriers and checkpoints to make sure that we're not doing the wrong thing based on our words.
Yeah,
right? So
but our words become the reason I think the Tower of Babel is so significant is because it's with your words that you create separation before you separate. Before I tell you it's over, I have to say it.
Yeah.
Until I say it, it's not actually over. I have to say it. I can think it's over. I can want it to be over, But when I say it, when the words come out of my mouth, then things can actually start to happen. And I think what we happen a lot of times is that when we say things, people really don't think they have any power in what they say. They really don't. They don't think that I can change how I think about something. They just don't, because I don't think we teach people how to. And that's because we don't give them the words to do it. Because the words give the ideas. And then the ideas give the idea for creation. And it's like, then you can play with these ideas. It's like when you're a kid, you get some toys to play with. Words become the same way. But when they create ideas that don't create harmony with each other, you have a problem because it creates cognitive dissonance. And
all right, so let's pause right there. One of the things that I wanted to get into was about what you said, but I would say, I think we talk about intersectionality. I think there are areas and nuanced areas where the message with words is intentionally blurred.
Yes.
Right. And right there in those moments where we like to talk about theory versus praxis.
Well, that's why if you look up the idea to blur, I say that's why the queer, let's say queer movement in America. That's why it's so powerful, because it blurs lines. Right. And anytime you can blur a line, you can create a bigger distortion. Because you can blur the lines. You can be ambiguous. You can be androgynous. Nobody knows what you are. It's like, ooh, is he Metro? Remember when Prince came out? Everybody was like, is he gay? It's like, is he gay? It's like, no, he's not. But he's putting on an image. Right. And I think so often when we start to look at the distortions that are created for the purpose of whatever the individual is trying to create. And I think that we start to create an environment where we accept ideas from other cultures because we don't have a contrast. So, for example, if somebody says he's being romantic, what they're saying is he's loving in the way of a Roman, because romantic is the way the Romans did it. Okay. Romance. If you say you're romancing her, then you're doing what Romans do to attract women. You're romancing them because the Romans do it first. You're just taking it after them. So the language intertwines with our reality. And so we have to be able to understand, if we want to distort reality, we have to make sure that we first have the same frame. We have to have the same frame.
So when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Yes. And you know how the Romans do. The Romans, see, if, for example, if you don't study Roman culture, then you don't know what being romantic is.
Okay.
If you don't study the Roman culture, you don't even know what romance is, because how did you romance somebody in the times of Rome? See, you don't know. But we have incorporated the idea of this is the Eurocentric ideology of what a Western male who was born between this generation and that generation should do in a socially acceptable environment to whatever, you know, and we lose sight of that.
Well, so words are so important that they do kind of set the building block and foundation for what's expected. Right. And because in a world where one would want some sort of light in the tunnel, in the dark tunnel ahead of them, words provide that. All right. So, and words turn into pictures, and pictures can turn into film. And so now we're talking about representation.
Yes.
All right. And so representation with words, I think, is one of the biggest factors that we really don't talk about. But sometimes you might hear when it comes from, like, your parents or somebody tries to correct you, right? So instant constructive criticism about language is important, but I won't say no one, but it's hard to take real-time constructive criticism about language.
But I would say this. If you're not an etymologist of words, I would say it can be very simple. Because I would say this, we're talking in a Roman kind of system, right? So when you say power in Rome, the word is imperium. Imperium is where we get the word emperor from.
Okay.
And so if you get the word emperor from the idea that the power of the state, so whoever wields the power of the state is what they have the imperum. That's power in the sense where I can get the state to do what I want to do on my behalf. And most people don't have imperium power. But if you say power in an authoritative Roman sense, it means you could direct the state actions.
So the imperial power,
the
right,
imperial power.
The imperial power. So there's two different ways I would say someone could look at imperial power.
Yeah.
Talking about positional power, and we're talking about the psychological power one can have thinking that they have it. Is that fair?
See, no, but I would say this. I would say that in theory, correct.
The only reason I say that, the only reason I say it is because one, with positional power, that's implied. But I mean, to have this the mind frame.
No, but but you are correct. So for example, if I had the seal of the emperor on a document, because the emperor's face was on the coins. So if I had the imprint of his coin on this document, I knew that this person carrying it had the authority of the emperor. The emperor was in his letter. So the person carrying these words has the authority of the emperor, because the emperor can't be everywhere at once. But his word has to be everywhere at once. So in order for my word to be everywhere at once, I need people that work for me to administer my state.
Well, this is the C2, command and control.
Yes.
Right. Being able to have that access and have a voice, even when your voice is not there. Right. So that's your words going beyond you.
Yeah.
Like having, but that can come in both of those ways, though. One comes easier.
Oh, yes.
But the other one, I think, hits a little bit harder.
Yeah, but I think But I think
the only reason I say that, Doc, because we talk about Napoleon a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And so Napoleon was beyond his years. But the way he was beyond his years is because he learned, at a faster rate, and he had some cutting edge military technology, but he was also able to put that in his mentees. Right. And so they had his word and was able to act on behalf of him without him even being there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think, but it goes back to this idea that victory is won on the battlefield. The idea of power and authority. The emperor in the latter days of Rome, the empire changed hands quickly. Because the empire changed hands quickly because the power vacuum happened quickly. So in America, we change every 4 years. Right. We have a power vacuum. Mm-hmm. But people until last time didn't realize how dangerous that vacuum was. They thought because from the normalcy bias, that ain't nothing happening here. Right. Nothing to see here, folks. But see, the normalcy bias can't work this time. Because now that we know what you're capable of, now we understand your capability. To us to not prepare now is to be complicit. To be unprepared when your adversary tells you what they're going to do is complicity. And I think that we're seeing this idea now to bring up the indictments and felony charges.
Yes, good job.
But let's go. To bring it up, and the reason that's important is because we're seeing a very big distortion right now in this difference. We're seeing a very large distortion. And I'm sure you could probably see some of it that you would like to speak to.
Please go. Man, I can speak to it, but here's what I would say. All right, so words are going to be important right around this time, because people are going to be asking questions. How can a felon serve as a president? Right? And then you would say, he can't vote. Depending, right? Like he said, they're not saying they can't run. So there's where those words and those nuances and understanding
Oh
those
yes.
words, and that's why it's so important to get into that legislation, because those little
Bruh.
words that they'll slip in there, if you don't know what they mean and you try to use your context clues, you're going to be screwed, right? And so, yo, that indictment, I'm pretty sure shook a lot of people, but it also scared some people
Yeah.
because they're gonna. I think we're really going to get a chance to see what power really is and what really runs this
Yeah.
country.
Yeah. Because most people ain't really been flexed on before. See,
Is
most
the
people ain't never really been flexed on. And when somebody flexes on you, they just say shut up and color. It's like, look, this conversation's over right now. I'm gonna do what I want to do, and you come stop me if you want to. This is, we're changing the power dynamic because imperiums change. And see, what I've learned is most people don't know how to share heads of state. Meaning the idea is that there can only be one emperor in the room at a time. Imperium. There has to be one emperor in the room at a time.
It's been that was what, okay, so that was what Napoleon was using against all. That's how he would literally pick his fights. He would pick his fights with groups of or countries that were headed by multiple people because they knew there would be chaos in the decision making.
And so now it's divide and conquer. But the reason that's important for words is because the idea is simple, is that the most powerful branch of government, if you read the U.S. Constitution, the less words are written about it. You ever notice that contrast?
Say it again.
That the branch with the most power is written about the least in the Constitution.
Article 2?
Article 3.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Article 3.
Article 3, because they do have the most power.
They have the most power. And they got a lifetime appointment, and they're getting bought off, and they got flags at their house flying upside down saying that the nation is under duress. Do you understand that from a psychological perspective? The judge who sits on the court of the highest bench in the land believes that the nation, or his family, because what he said, but somebody in his home believes that the nation is under duress. Psychologically, how does he think? Should he be making decisions that affect this country? Come on, bro, we ain't silly. But we understand that the distortion exists because we're not told that people with power have psychological safety issues too. People with power have psychological safety issues. Well, and in order to protect my power, if the dude who put me on the court is a convicted felon, meaning the dude who put me on my job is a felon, I don't want you as a reference, bruh. Let alone you taint everything you touch now. Everything you've done has felon on it now. Yeah. Ex-president felon. It's felon. It's like a name that we tattooed everywhere you go, to everybody you touch. Felon. And that's not even the only problem with it. To some, it won't even matter because they'll change the word felon to its etymological use in America and tell you that the only reason that you have felony disenfranchisement in America is following the U.S. Civil War when they wanted to strip rights from black people. And the only way they could do it was to give you the title of felon. That was it. That's why we're the only country in the world that makes you can't vote. It was
13. What's that? 13 and what? Oh, we're talking about Bill of Rights. We're talking about, so the amendment, 13th Amendment, is what gives us the right to be able to enfranchise people or disenfranchise people with the word felony, because they say, hey, you can't have slavery, but unless you get right.
Yeah. And so we yeah.
Go ahead.
But the idea is not lost on people. The reason that the constitutional requirements only let you be 35 years old, a resident or naturalized citizen of 14 years, the only reason you have those requirements is because they understood that in times of chaos, they would have unqualified men who would lead us. They knew this. They knew they would have young people with no education, with no background, with no training, and they just got here because their daddy uncle knew somebody who played golf with this dude. It would be probably nepotistic. They know that because when power gets paranoid, it becomes consolidated and it doesn't trust people unless you're an ideologue. And ideologues don't listen to people. They only listen to people who share their ideas. They don't want to learn because learning would create something that would create disharmony for them. It would create disharmony for them. And you think that how could learning create disharmony? God, we'll get to that another time, but
well, in these particular situations, I have to say that, you know, any information that would be a detriment to your power, you wouldn't want to hear it, because this goes back to those words we talk about, cognitive dissonance.
yes.
And then you would have to replace it with something. And if
Yes.
that something is not based in the reality, we're calling that a cognitive distortion, correct?
Yes. And
Okay.
and there's challenges because there's conversations as a nation that we've never had. Like as a like during apartheid South Africa, they had a conversation there about what had happened. It was like an open discussion, a forum, but the only conversations that we've had are interpersonally. We had interpersonal
Here continental US.
yes, interpersonal or family or familial.
Well,
Maybe
there's been a silence the whole time though. Like there's been so take your average school teacher.
yeah.
Now I'm going to speculate based on some facts here, right? Okay. Your average school teacher is 42 years old, white woman. All
Mhm.
right. And so I get back to some things that I found, but the most pacifying people I've found in life were the teachers, right? And so, but they're the same type of people who could pacify you. That's like, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to talk about that. Things of that nature. For whatever reason, that consciousness might have had to be quiet. But I'll tell you, they've made it hard to talk about anything in this country related to religion, race, politics, or anything
Wait,
that makes
wait. You said
a
they.
certain
Who are
when I
they?
say anyone who is uncomfortable, but from a power standpoint, anything uncomfortable to be spoken on would be religion. So the powers that be.
Yeah, but I think that the idea to say that because someone is uncomfortable requires a level of assessment that sometimes we're not qualified to give, only because the reason that somebody may be uncomfortable, not because they don't want to talk about it, they may just not want to talk about it with you. They may not want to talk about it with you. But if they don't want to talk about it with you, that may not make them uncomfortable. They may just not like you and feel comfortable around you personally. And so you don't provide emotional or psychological safety to that person, so they don't feel open to share personal things.
Well,
And
that's
not,
fine.
and it's not necessarily
That's fine. That's fine. But no, the conversations aren't being had, and
yeah.
people,
They're not.
whoever they are, meaning anybody, right? But what I would say, anyone not willing to have a conversation about a difficult interaction that needs to be had to get to the next best step, that's who they is. And
No, that's what I'm
so,
saying. But I think that you can make that assessment to anyone at any
you
time,
can,
even
So
yourself.
this
No,
goes to anybody.
yeah, no,
This applies to anybody,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But in this particular
yeah.
moment, we've gotten used to not engaging in that emotional discussion because of the emotional discord.
No, but I think because you're framing it as an emotional discussion, I just sometimes reject the frame that it's an emotional discussion.
Oh, well, I like that.
I think it's a strategic and a logical discussion. I think that we don't discuss it strategically. I think that we don't discuss it for a particular reason. The same reason where like if you look at like most baddies say, listen, huh?
Who is we?
What's that?
Who is we?
In what context?
You just said I don't think we discuss it.
Oh, I mean, as a nation. As a nation, I don't think we discuss it as a nation. I think we don't have national conversations about tough subjects, because if we can't have a national conversation about it, then it's harder to sometimes have individual conversations, because we don't have anyone who leads the narrative and says, okay, this is the far limit of how much I should be able to go publicly and be acceptable. This is the left limit. This is what I can't do publicly. And in between this area is a safe space. If I go over here, I'm kind of fringe. If I go over here, I'm radical. So this is my safe space. And sometimes I will extend it a little bit for necessity, but it's a safe space. And in this safe space, I tell you, what I've seen the most is that we don't share with people frameworks. When I say we, I mean like the idea of academia. Like when you're learning something, it becomes important not to share what I know if I intend to use it for distortion. So if I plan on distorting people, I shouldn't tell you how I'm going to distort you. I should just distort you and then not tell you that you're being distorted. You know,
just start distorting people, right?
That would be logical. Like that would be logical if that was the goal.
But also at a certain level of education, that becomes unethical too, though, right?
And that's what I'm saying. And this is what I mean. The idea that ethics exist, but are we talking about imperium? Because if we're talking about imperium, you become the ethical authority. In imperium, when I operate as the state, I have
you create the rule.
I have to take the weight of it. And sometimes the weight of the state will crush people because they don't want that smoke. So the idea is that so the idea becomes, in an imperium, I don't submit to anybody else's ethical standards but my own.
Right.
But that's the thing. No one trains you how to be an imperium, because you can become a tyrant very quickly as an imperial person. You can become a tyrant.
So let's debate on that.
Yeah.
That last statement that you said about you don't believe people. So when you say I don't believe people are taught the imperium.
Yeah. How to operate in imperium, because conceptually, I believe God takes the idea of imperium from us, because the idea of imperium and God sometimes can be diametrical to operate them.
Yeah, but we see. So remember, we had conversations about the different types of rearing that we see culturally.
Yes.
And so, based on the powers that be, based on the socialization, based on his country, we'll leave it at that. The preferred,
yes,
that particular rearing does align with the imperium.
Oh, yes. Oh, no, 100%. That's what I mean. It's the idea of operating in an environment that you have not been trained to operate in. So I can't put you behind the wheel of the car without giving you some driving lessons. And so the idea is that I need you to guide me until I don't need the training wheels.
So again, now that's gonna go back to something else we were talking about. You remember we were talking about reform, resist, like recreate, reimagine, or something like that. And I was saying that I feel like I see a trend with women being more in reform. And I think this is one of those unique areas where there's an overlapping for me. There's an intersectionality with this.
Say the first part again.
Well, so in the power dynamics of sheesh, man. Okay, so I was having a conversation about how certain people, like we'll say like Black women specifically, right? I'll use Black women as an example. I saw a significant amount of Black women choosing reform as their method of we'll say social justice or practice or justice in the world, right? Like reforming what already exists. And so if you were to give this question of the 4 different types of R's, how you go about recreating your world, right, from your power dynamic, I found more women more on the reform of what's already in place. So like following the rule, right? And so when I was talking about the rearing, I'm saying that we live in a society where there are people who are taught to be bosses, and there are other people who are just not even given a chance to be a boss. And we sit
Oh,
in the
yeah.
power dynamics of not given a chance to be a boss.
Oh yeah.
And
I
so
mean,
we
it's
don't
like,
get to have that power that you're talking about, is what
yeah.
I'm
I
saying.
mean, it's like going to squadron commander school. They're going to school to learn how to run this squadron.
Right.
And this is the standard that I want it run in, so that your Imperium does not interfere with someone else's Imperium. In the idea that we are all emperors of our own domains.
Mm-hmm.
And the first domain is you. You're the domain. And
Right.
so when you come across another empire, do you know how to make allies? Do you know how to create alliances? Do you know how to share power with others? Do you know how to build networks where people don't have to feel like I gotta hide and share information because somebody might use it against me behind my back? Do you have that ability to build that? Because if you can't build that, that's what it requires. That's what it requires. Because you won't share with people information that you think they would use to be detrimental to you. It's just not a good tactic. And that's why we don't talk about politics in this country, why we don't talk about religion in this country, because it is a tactic. It is a stratagem that has been used and still used to this day to suppress, so that we can take that reform mentality, because reform sounds great. If the alternative is what?
Oh, nothing.
That's what I'm saying. Because the alternative really is nothing. Because when we say, and I think this is where people confuse the idea of color with power. And that's why when they say like stuff like white supremacy, it confuses people, because it just means that people who have a skin color from both political parties have supremacy politically. That's all it means. It means that they're negotiating with themselves. They're negotiating with themselves, and most minorities in the country are usually bargaining chips that they're negotiated with.
We see that with caucuses. We see that with the caucuses.
That's what I'm saying. So we understand is that the person who can build the biggest coalition will have power. And that's what they don't understand about the Trump people. They have a big coalition, but just not that. They're radical. They are rabid. They see a country that they're losing. They see every fear you can imagine coming to pass. They see equality on the horizon. They see General Lee's streets being changed in the South. They see a world of equality crashing in on them, and it's happening too quickly. It's just too quick. And as it happens too quickly, what you will see is they will now try to change the language, or to hold and draw a line in the sand where say, this you shall not cross. And what the right will do, and I will say this, is they're very good at this. They will draw a line in the sand that the bullets come after. They will. Because what they will do is they will write their names on a piece of paper and tell you what they're going to die for. They will write their names on a paper. That's because that's in their culture. They will write their names on a paper and know it. And right now, it's that piece of paper that is in the archives in DC called the U.S. Constitution. And there's a lot of things that people do not know about this document that they're going to get a crash course in these next few weeks and months. They're going to understand some very sketch things that it says you can do that you're going to think is illegal and crazy as F, because it's never been done, but it's in there. And then when they pull it out, because they understand how to get power, and they're going to pull it out, and one they can simply use is anywhere that a Republican does not win, all the state legislator would have to do is not send their slate of electors. because there's no requirement that they do it. They don't have to send them. This has been done in the past. And the Constitution says if no one gets 270 votes, then the House of Representatives decides who is the president by representation, delegation, not by pure numbers of House votes. Who got the most delegations in their states? That matters. That's how the president gets picked. And as it sits right now, it ain't looking too good for some home teams. And people are going to be upset.
Right.
Because they're not going to understand that they're already rigging the system now to do it. So they're removing judicial reviews from the legislative process. They're saying, Judge, you can't hear election cases anymore because the legislature can determine what the judiciary can hear. And people don't know that.
Yes. They make the laws.
They make the laws. And they make the laws. And all they have to do and all they'd have to do is, in the event that no law can be made, all they need to do is go over and say, hey, we have a constitutional crisis and a question. How shall it be decided? Hey, Supreme Court. Hey, guys, we need you. And three of the dudes and three of the people on there you picked. And one of them, wife, helped you in a coup. And the other one got the flag flying upside down. I think he got 5 votes, bro. You know what I'm saying? And people don't realize that that could literally say Ohio, Michigan, Florida, South, any state that they don't want to go to not get to 270, they say got to send it. And they don't have to. And that's where it's a crisis, because now it's this limbo thing going on now. It's a limbo. Who does what? And the document is not written in a way that people understand what the Second Amendment was really for. And I think that they get this idea a little confused. It was never this like to stop the government from being invaded. That was never what it was about. And when they understand this idea that we're not as far ideologically as people think we are, because we already have the conditions of silence already. Because we already have a condition of silence. And if it does not affect me here, I will be quiet. That's kind of built into our, DNA.
Well, that's what I was talking about, right? Like they have, when I say they meaning the powers that be under, we'll say, game theory. We have gotten to a point where silence is the winner, because we won't speak up. And the reason the Tower of Babel comes back is because why did it exist? To explain why we speak different languages. Yeah.
And even amongst each other, because you're seeing this happening very closely, where you'll have family members, they can't talk to each other. And you'd say it's not because they don't want to talk to each other, it's because the emotion has overridden the logic. Because the universes, the imperiums cannot enter into each other's kingdoms without warfare. There's warfare, and sometimes they like that. Sometimes they want that. Sometimes they say, hey, if you come to my domain, be prepared for conflict. Be prepared. And that in that way, we both know what the goal is. But if you come there with a peace treaty, and then it's like, hold up, bro, this dude is shady. He come, this is his MO. He come and asking for peace, but he killing everybody who's getting the gate. But you see what I'm saying? And I think that becomes strategy, because game theory to me only applies if both parties are acting rational. Meaning, if there's irrationality, then game theory won't be applicable, because there is no dominant strategy when it comes to emotions, because I can't out emotion somebody.
What?
Can't out emotion somebody.
We'll put a pin in that, because I get what you're saying.
No, what I mean is that I'm saying like when I say out emotion somebody, I'm saying like some people are more in tune with their emotions quickly, like boom. Some people have a process of emotions that takes them a little longer to process, so they're not going to be able to give you a boom.
Right.
It's going to be like, wait a minute, what is this feeling? Let me process this further. Let me understand that these next few months, like, we'll tell you the game plan, we'll tell you what's going to happen, so when it happens, you don't look surprised. Okay. Right now, there's a narrative of words called propaganda. Propaganda, this is the mass distortion. I'll say mass distortions mechanisms.
Public relations.
Yeah, all that. All that. Softeners, fluffers. The king, the emperor often needs a translator, because the emperor goes into places where he doesn't speak the native tongue. So he needs someone who can share his interests in places where he would not be welcomed. Because sometimes his presence alone is too high to go to your station. Meaning, like, the general's position is too high to come to you. That's why every time a general comes out, it's a big deal, because he's so busy. He took time from his busy day to come see what the paralegal doing. Boom. And so anyway, so when you get to
don't waste your time, bruh.
You know, so when you get to that dynamic where you're operating in spaces where you're understanding that I don't need imperium power here. My word choices here are different, because I'm learning that to your point, messenger role sometimes only requires me to leave the message and not concern myself with what happens after the message has been sent.
Ain't that something?
It's poof. But because if you keep interacting, sometimes I think what happens in a lot of people interactions is that it's harder to try to understand why I don't understand if my goal isn't to understand you first. Like, if my goal is to understand you first, I won't attribute malice to you. I will say that would be ignorance.
Well,
that's
admirable, though. That's admirable what you're saying, right? Like, to say, hey, I'm going to be present and try to understand you, right?
Try.
But people wouldn't even, when I say people, in that instance and example, the recipient of said attention could potentially still take that wrong, because I go to the aforementioned, what I say, people do not like to be corrected real time about what they're saying, unless they're in some sort of position or leverage. What's the other word I said for leverage? I can't remember.
Yeah, and so where I would say it's okay to ask for clarification that could turn into correction. Because I would say that if you're sending me a distortion in real time, but you don't like correction in real time, we're going to have an impasse, because I'm going to be induced and aroused to say, you know what, I'm not going to let that distortion lie right now. You know, I would let that one slide, but I'm tired of that.
Well, I would say, with all the distortions that go on, right, to be in understanding, to be an overstander, as I like to say, right, you would have to become a student of life.
Yes.
And, education, like academics and all of this, education being the sum of all experiences, but academics has made it really hard for people in general to want to be students. And because we were never truly taught how to learn, right? We were taught how to be workers if we went through that particular schools, and what I'm saying is, I'm speaking from a standpoint that, it takes being a student of people, of words, of the interaction of energy, okay, life. Oh, now I'm just starting to sounds like I'm starting to drop some keywords and attributes of salt. All right. It sounds like it. And the only reason I say that is because being able to recognize the energy that's going on, right?
Yeah.
Saying, hey, this is emotional, but we rationally need to talk about this, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. But this is, when Bush started, the Iraq War, he said, "I will start at a time and a place of my choosing." Essentially, he said, "Look, we're going to start to fight, or when I want to fight." And I think about this idea of a fair fight. But one of the fallacies, one of the distortions is called the fallacy of fairness.
Okay.
The fallacy of fairness. We don't start fair. Life ain't fair.
Life ain't
And
fair.
it's the way that it is. And sometimes it's dog eat dog. Sometimes it's just what it is. It's gritty and nasty. But when
Right.
it gets to a point of that, your character is revealed. So what I would say is this: the word character comes from the word ethos, which means the etching. It's like if you think of a chisel and somebody hitting a chisel to make a sculpture, you'll notice if you get to certain parts of the etching, you have to be very careful that you don't damage the whole structure. So if I'm etching around the nose, if I hit the wrong spot,
Right.
I'll
Shift the whole nose
destroy the
up.
whole structure. And I could have spent 20 years building this statue, but one careless tink,
Yeah.
and it's all gone.
Right.
Now my character is still intact,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a deformity, there's a malady. Some would say there's a wound. This is why the etymology of the word trauma is to be wounded. That's what it means. It's a wound, and a wound that usually does not heal, that festers, that gets picked at, that is emotional, because it doesn't make logical sense to hold on to a wound psychologically unless you use the wound for purpose. I need this wound for something. It helps me cope. It whatever. Blah, fill in blank. So I like the idea. Go ahead. But then the idea becomes, there was a question that Jesus would ask people at the water at the well. He asked them, he said, "Do you want to be made whole? Or do you want to be made well?" And I think the question is answered, yes, I do, but yes, I want to lose 5 pounds, but I want to do this, but the question is do you want it? And then after you determine that, then you find out is you get around people who have it. You get around people who have it.
Okay.
You get around people who have it. Because if you get around people who have it, they talk differently. They use different words.
Yeah.
They use different words.
You're not wrong. And I went ahead and put the money tip and book tip up there because you said something that's literally on my shirt. And when I say shirt, go to oabykj.com. You see there are things like turn tests into testimony, turn pain into product type stuff, right? Because if you're sitting on those old, transgressions, emotions, they literally turn into, we're finding, turn into disease, or at least holding you back, right?
Yeah.
And so, being able to transition from a place of enabledness, of like being enabled, literally being enabled, right, psychologically to being able to do stuff. So, Doc, as we move into this next segment on, kind of perfect timing, I'm reading this book. I think it's called let me get it here. God Man. God Man, the Word Made Flesh.
Okay. Who wrote
Um,
it? Who wrote it?
by Dr. George Carey. Yes, yeah. Dr. George Carey, God Man. It made me something made me pick this book up, man, because I saw it was talking about the analogies of the Bible and like the actual you know anatomical experience that the body goes through, right?
Mhm.
Like likening the Holy Spirit to breath and that place in the solar plexus where it lives, likening that to like the manger where Joseph and Mary had the Immaculate Conception. So this book is touching on a lot of different things. I would say my money tip. So have you heard of this drug,
Ozempic,
Ozempic? What is it? Yeah,
the
yeah,
weight
the
loss.
one that makes
Yeah,
the weight loss diabetes drug.
yeah.
So the company that makes them is Novo Nordisk. And I believe I might have spoken about them on here before, but I would say this. Around this time last year, we'll say latest August, they're about $85 per share. And like right now, they're like 140. And so Nuvo makes that diabetes drug. And I've been messing with them since last year. Not because I was trying to take advantage of the fact that people were using this,
Yeah.
just a byproduct. My dad put me on it. And he was like, man, and he ain't never talked about a stock. I was like, all right now. And so, hey, he was right. Thank you, Dad. What you got, Doc?
Man, I've been reading
Oh, you got it.
The Psychology of Supremacy.
Is it good?
Man, it's good. That's why I was on the Imperium. It starts off explaining Imperium from a psychological perspective, because the book uses an intersectionality framework to explain the idea of supremacy from a model that people can understand. Because Rome Imperium represents this idea that the psychology of supremacy, meaning that the true power rests in the state.
I'm going to go. Okay, so the name of it is Imperium with the psychological of
Yeah,
supremacy, the psychology of supremacy Imperium.
yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead. I remember you sent me to this. Hell, I might actually have this book on Kindle
But I
because
tell
you
you,
sent
man,
it to me.
you know what? I have this new process to getting books now, man. I thought about I thought about this book before I knew it existed. I thought about it because I said, if it exists, I need to read it, because that's where my thought process was taking me. And when I Googled, it just
I
came
have
up.
it. Yeah, I have it. I have it, sir. I bought it. I bought it.
It's good
I
stuff.
have that book, so I'm gonna go ahead and get. That's like 10 books now that I need to read. The last book that I got a hold of was the Secret Relationship one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the money
Yeah.
tip, man, is gamble on you. I think we've created a very negative stigma to a society of gambling, but not meaning taking risks on on each other, on yourself. And I say that, when you don't have an idea of a gambling or how to gamble, you sometimes are conservative with your own self, and you don't realize I got to make some I got to roll myself like some dice out here, and
Right.
perform and contort and get some things done, even though it's gonna make me uncomfortable. Because in order to your previous point, the word student is meaning someone who puts painstaking application to themselves, meaning no one can make you a student. You have to become one. No one can make you a student, because only you can apply it to yourself.
Right.
And sometimes it's painful.
It's always painful because, but you always, if you're a true student, always goes back for more. Like, all right, what? I didn't quite understand that. I didn't quite understand it. Hey, Doc, let me run this commercial, get the
All right.
bills paid, and then we'll come back with a final thought.
All right.
Mark one. Mark one. Mark
Hey, well,
Hey,
it's for you.
you already know who it is. KJ. Hey, for all those people in my business. Hey, don't worry about me. Hey, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Hey, you ain't got to worry about me. Don't worry about me, cause I ain't worried about shit. 2 fingers in the air and I'm out this bitch, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Hey, you ain't got to worry about me. Don't worry about me, cause I ain't worried about shit. 2 fingers in the air and I'm out this bitch.
All right. That's the final thought song right there. Don't worry about it because we're about to be out this. Yeah, man. Final thought for me is that it's been on my mind lately. I've been learning to be a little bit more quiet. I'm pretty sure if we go back on these podcasts, I've become more quiet on the podcast. And, for a lot of reasons. And the main reason is because you, sir, are a fountain of like information, a well of knowledge. And I appreciate you sharing this journey on this Lighthouse series with me. All ration, no emotion, but emotionally, I would say I appreciate the journey because it has helped me shut up. Even though I have this platform to say stuff, right? Like it makes me want to be careful. It makes me want to be careful because what I say here, I try to live out in the world. If somebody sees me, like, oh yeah, don't you da 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 da. Like I'm the same person, so I just want to be careful. So my final thought is the Tower of Babel makes me think about what we're saying. And people, I know we get caught in those real life emotional situations, but we have to think about what we say and do and how that reverberates through the universe from an energy standpoint, from a life standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, from a love standpoint, right? And being able to be a messenger of all. So, my final thought for the Tower of Babel is, you know, let's try to understand each other. Let's become students of understanding the words and how
Oh
we
yeah.
receive.
Yeah, man. I like it.
All right, all right. Doc, I'm gonna end this session. We can do a little quick debrief. Hey, welcome back, Facebook. I lost y'all for a second because shit happens, but I'm back, and so we're gonna keep this thing rocking until we not. So that's us here. We'll catch you on the other side. Until next time. Peace out on this side.